Every character played by the same actor is now a part of one continuous story. Which actor has the best story arc? Patrick Stewart. He rises to power, becoming king in the 1600s. Hundreds of years later he develops amazing psychic abilities and opens up a school for other gifted people like him, only to become captain of the Enterprise centuries later. And millennia after that as an escaped slave serving Duke Atreides. Mood is a thing for cattle and women, boy, not fighting. Christian Bale. Races cars and scams politicians, then makes his money on Wall Street, becomes Batman, and finally is the vice president. Don't forget Empire of the Sun and Newsies. Or his serial killer days. From Bateman to Batman. Gary Oldman. Punk rocker to prime minister by way of a presidential assassin, an immortal vampire, a famous composer, a Russian terrorist, a dwarf and a wizard. Don't forget Jean-Baptiste Emmanuel Zorg, as whom he tried to steal the fifth element from Floston Paradise in service to the great evil. I love how his and Bruce Willis's character never once meet in that movie. I don't know that they even know the other exists. The fact that the protagonist and the antagonist of the movie never physically face each other in any way is such a ridiculous, but somehow low-key, concept. You don't realize it unless you purposely think about it. Honestly, The Fifth Element is one of my favorite movies because of all that type of shit. I've watched it many, many times, and each time, you can find some small thing that you miss that makes it a deeper story or universe. Leonardo DiCaprio has a hell of a story. First he is a petty thief in Titanic, then steals $4 million in Catch Me If You Can, brings in beer during Prohibition as Gatsby, then $200 million in a scam in Wolf of Wall Street. So, clearly all the same character who is getting better as a criminal as time goes on. Drowns from the Titanic, wakes up on the subconscious shores of Inception. Freezes after Titanic to wake up inside a wolfskin. Bill Murray, with Groundhog Day ending very differently each time. This one makes the most sense, since every Bill Murray character is just Bill Murray. In the most wholesome timeline, Bill Murray fulfills his dream of being a professional basketball player. I'm really curious how Luke Skywalker ends up a supervillain in Gotham. Well, after he failed to kill Kylo Ren, Luke began a tour of planets as the darkness in his heart grew. Arriving on a planet called Earth, he begins his final descent to the dark side. Earth would never be the same, everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. And then years later after Aang defeats him, he oversees the council trying to take down Deathclock. Dang, so Doctor Strange is actually secretly Sherlock Holmes. Huh. So is Iron Man by that logic. Discombobulate. It's gotta be Harrison Ford. He starts as Han from Star Wars. He tries to settle down with Leia after Return of the Jedi, feels trapped in married life because Hess actually a scoundrel. Han shot first, never forget, decides to ghost everyone and lay low on some backworld primitive planet, Earth. Assumes the identity of Indiana Jones. Goes on all sorts of adventures while pretending to be some senile old guy's son, sorry Henry Jones Sr. Father dies, Han starts to settle down from all the adventuring. He's built a pretty sweet life, starts to get comfortable but still has all of his charm. Moves on from being an adored archaeology professor, and eventually gets discovered by a political machine that thinks he's incredibly electable. Eventually Han uses his charm to become President of the United States before kicking those terrorists off his plane. Then they eventually copy his body and mannerisms into a replicant named Rick Deckard. Edit, thanks for the reward, strangers. Happy to make y'all's days. Y'all forgot to mention that while feeling trapped married to Leia, he winds up accused of her murder, is found guilty and sent to prison and manages to escape and become an intergalactic fugitive, which leads him to his life and new alias, Han Solo, no longer Dr. Richard Kimball. He always claimed innocence and that he was framed by a one-armed man. His intelligence is what allows for him to commandeer the Millennium Falcon and to understand astrophysics, engineering, and space travel. His fugitive status is what leads him to life as a smuggler and living with one foot in the underworld of intergalactic space and one foot someplace else. One-armed man, Luke Skywalker amused. Wild, crazy ride, Johnny Depp. Sweet. So Raoul Duke, Rango, Gilbert Grape, Tonto, Edward Scissorhands, the Mad Hatter, and Jack Sparrow are all escaping on a boat from Sweeney Todd and Grindelwald. Meanwhile, Burton's Johnny Depp characters visit the Willy Wonka's factory. I would like to see how Josh Brolin went from some kid in a group of other kids to a big purple intergalactic super alien who wiped out half the universe to a time-traveling assassin. Don't forget the part where he moves to 1980s Texas, gets killed over a briefcase of drug money, gets better and becomes governor in the 90s, followed by becoming president. Jeff Goldblum. It'd mostly be just a bunch of Jeff Goldblums together, and I'd pay to see that. They'd be gathered on Sakaar by the Grandmaster because he likes to have like-minded people around him. And the Jeff from the world according to Jeff Goldblum. Has to see normal Goldblum. Hugh Jackman. Because as Wolverine he could conceivably live a different life across different time periods. I want to see Wolverine fighting in the French Revolution, and singing about it. And then later open up a freak show. Only to become Duke of Albany, traveling to the future, and falling in love with a marketing executive, before inventing the elevator. Samuel L. Jackson. Here's what you're working with. n.wikipedia.org. Nick Fury as the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. has access to time travel and interstellar capabilities. He runs a number of operations in a Legends of Tomorrow style which keep history on track and ultimately saves pretty much everything. Very special operations such as correcting the Hitler problem, eradicating snakes on a MF plane, defending the Jedi Order, safeguarding a very important suitcase, and making sure the right people die in a cabin. So Nick Fury teams up with Frozone, Jules Winfield, Mace Windu, and John Arnold to defeat Mr. Glass, Richmond Valentine Stephen, and the Octopus. Sir Christopher Lee, he had one hell of a career. Gotta love how Scaramanga went from being a vampire to a golden assassin that eventually becomes a combo of very old and very deadly Sith. Who after being killed becomes a wizard in the afterlife before being sentenced to rot in his tower, unless you watch the special director's cut where he falls into a spike. Book, Saruman dies after Wormtongue slashes his throat in the Shire at the end of the War of the Ring. Robin Williams. This he ends as a genie with great power. Nah, it ends with him becoming a robot so he can become a human again and die human. Although maybe he used genie powers to make himself a robot in the first place. I love thinking that there's a continuity between Jim Halpert and Jack Ryan. It's the universe where Pam never wanted to leave Scranton. After the show ended, Jim felt trapped. But the CIA had been watching his antics with Dwight for years. They saw how he could anticipate his enemy, read him almost as well as a precog. All he had to do was sign off on never seeing Pam, PP, or the other kid again. Jim getting interviewed by the CIA, Mr. Halpert. Why do you keep looking off to the side and shrugging? Keanu, of course. I'm just not sure if it works better with the Matrix being the hub and he jumps from simulation to simulation after robot peace is achieved, or if it's better with Bill and Ted as the hub. Where does John Wick fit in? Alternate reality, where Neo doesn't take the pill. Nicolas Cage. Piecing together the Nick Cage timeline is what made Abed go crazy. Tom Kenny. SpongeBob SquarePants, Ice King, Cat Dog and all the cartoon characters from kids from the mid-90s early 00s grew up with Edit. I know Hess done a lot more voices and still does them, but I can't list them all. SpongeBob and Gary and Ice King and Gunter all at once. Him and John DiMaggio together, JD being Jake and Bender, and Ann and. Algebraic. Tom Hanks. Ever since Disney got rid of their The Great Movie Ride, I thought they should replace it with the Great Tom Hanks Movie Ride. Start out with Walt Disney welcoming you to the ride, then follow Tom Hanks through an airport terminal, to him flying a plane, then it crash lands on a volcanic island, then he finds and captains a boat before it's taken over by pirates, then a mermaid rescues him, then they swim to Europe where he fights Germans and 3 different conspiracy terrorists before riding the Polar Express to New York to fall in love with Meg Ryan 3 different times as he runs across the country coaching the Rockford Peaches and managing the Wonders before he takes a rocket to the moon. Well, Brad Pitt continuously gets younger as he travels through space, joins a fight club, robs a bank, and fights zombies. If that's not interesting, I don't know what is.